Has the age-old question finally been answered? Has it finally been answered? Do I, Chris McConnell, do I have the answers? Have I figured out the formula to winning your fantasy league? I like to think I do. Of course, we all like to think we do. But the age-old question entering the season, going into your draft, is always, what's the best strategy? What strategy should I go? Do I go wide receiver heavy? Go zero RB? Do I go hero RB? A draft strategy that has recently gained a lot of traction. Yours truly is not a fan of it. Or do I stay traditional in a world where everybody has moved away from the traditional? Oh, the traditional. You shouldn't feel trapped in the traditional. You don't change the way you do it. It's not 1998. It's 2021. My argument was to stay traditional with a little spice on the side. The draft strategy that I was deploying, that many of you know, many of you that have listened and watched the shows throughout the summer and listened to Mark and I bicker about it because we don't see eye to eye. Surprise, surprise, my partner and I don't see eye to eye on something. Is it better to go wide receiver heavy? Is it better to go running back heavy? And most of you will know, and hopefully most of you kind of follow suit, in drafting in leagues that are super flex, that are not just traditional one quarterback leagues, because one quarterback leagues, it's not as fun. Okay, the first two rounds of the draft are completely easily forecastable. You know, in a one quarterback league, you know it's going to be dominated by running backs. You might have one wide receiver, right? Like you might have one wide receiver go. Devontae Adams, probably, maybe a Tyreek Hill here and there. But for the most part, you know what's going to happen, right? You know who's going to be there where you draft. But in a super flex league that puts more emphasis on the quarterback position, that's where things get interesting. That's where you don't really, it's harder to forecast the first 2-3 rounds. But we try to forecast it anyway for your, for your benefit. Well, so anyway, I'm a long-winded opening way of saying you probably should have gone running back early. You probably should. And you probably, now maybe you didn't. Maybe your team's just fine. Maybe you're not facing injuries. Maybe you've gotten lucky. But I'm here to tell you right now that your team, and we're really specifically talking like Superflex 1QB redraft here, your redraft is probably in pretty good shape if you follow the same draft strategy that I was going after and that I was putting forth and advising everybody on before the season started. And what was that? What was that, Chris? Like if you weren't following, what is that, Chris? Please share. I will share with you what that was if you don't know, because I talked about it on numerous shows, beating a dead horse every week. Get these guys. And there were specific reasons why we're going to get to that. There's evidence for it. And by the way, this is going to be a running back heavy show. It's going to be all running backs. Running backs move the needle. Everybody loves to talk running back. You talk running backs till the sky turns green, right? So we're going to talk running backs tonight. So my draft strategy was I knew I'm going to go running back early. It was always go running back early. But what did I always caution each and every one of you against doing? Going into a draft with a locked and loaded draft strategy through 3 rounds. You can go in through it and say, okay, this is my plan to do. This is what I plan to do through 2 rounds. But once you get to the 3rd round, it starts, you can't really forecast as much. Things start going in a different direction. There's some surprise picks, right? So you don't want to say, okay, I'm getting this guy in the first round, this guy in the second round, this guy in the third round, because it doesn't always work like that. And you don't want to pigeonhole yourself into a draft strategy early on, and all of a sudden something happens in the first 2 or 3 rounds where you're like, oh, I didn't expect that to happen. What do I do now? Now my guy's gone. What do I do? And you're kind of left with, you're kind of left panicking because you don't know what to do. And before you know it, it's a round 3-4 turn, and you're in panic mode, right? You're spiraling downward, and the draft just started. So my whole advisement was go into the draft knowing what you're going to do, more than likely, with the first 2 rounds, because that's where you can really predict what's going to happen. You know Derrick Henry's going to be a top 5 pick. You knew Nick Chubb was going to be available at the end of the first, at the second, or maybe in the early second. You knew Antonio Gibson was going to be in the mid to late set. You know what I mean? Like, you knew this kind of stuff. We knew where guys were going to go for the most part, right? So that was easily forecastable. So my strategy was, I want to go running back early, but which running backs do I want to get? I don't want to get a guy like Nick Chubb in the first round. I don't want to do that. Why? Because he's not, he doesn't have really that league-winning ceiling if Kareem Hunt is healthy. Ironically enough, Kareem Hunt's not healthy right now, but we'll get to that in a second. I wanted guys that are going to be the workhorses, that are going to get all of the volume in the backfield for the most part. Because what is the rule that I've always told you? Chase the targets with wide receivers, chase the volume with running backs. Don't worry about these running backs that are getting all the carries for the most part. Don't worry about drafting these running backs early that are getting all the carries, not getting any of the targets. Obviously, guys like Jonathan Taylor, okay, and in some regard, Derrick Henry, they are exempt from that. There is that gray area. Nick Chubb as well. But the guys that you really want to go after are the guys that had the league-winning ceiling. Okay? The guys that were going to were on good offenses, even if they weren't on good offenses, but the guys that were going to be on good offenses, good football teams, well-coached, they were going to see a lot of volume. My number 1 target in the first round, you guys know, Austin Eckler. And you were able to get him in the very end of the first, and then come back around on the swing and get Najee Harris. Sometimes, many times, you could even turn that around. You could go Najee in the first round, right? And right off the bat, and that's why I loved drafting and redraft. That's why I love drafting, especially in Superflex, at the 9, 10, 11, 12 pick, because I wanted those boom, boom, those back-to-back workhorse running backs. Even if I ended up with Chubb, sometimes I'd end up with Ezekiel Elliott. And I know Chubb's been hurt, but he's going to be fine. We know he's going to be a top 10, 11 running back rest of the way when he comes back. But I wanted to start off with guys like that because I knew, for the most part, that in the third round, I could come right back around and go running back a third time. And that's where I would typically lose everybody. They're like, whoa, super flex league, and you haven't drafted a quarterback until the 4th round? No. I wasn't drafted a quarterback until the 5th round. Why? Because I knew Tom Brady was typically there in the 5th round. And look what's happening with Tom Brady. Right? So what were you doing in the 4th round? Well, you were getting your wide receiver 1 in the 4th round. You were getting either Amari Cooper, you were getting Adam Thielen. Very high quality, highly reliable, for the most part, wide receivers. Yeah, they're not going to finish as wide receiver 1, but they could finish as a top 10 wide receiver. And if you can get a top 10 wide receiver in the 4th round, you're going to do it every time. So not only do you start your draft off with 3 workhorse running backs who are getting a vast majority of the targets, who are seeing a lot of volume and scoring a lot of fantasy points, but you were getting a borderline wide receiver 1 in the 4th round and then getting your QB 1 in the 5th. And sometimes even in the 6th round. I know, it's crazy. Well, super flex, Chris, so what are you going to do? What about your second quarterback? Well, that's where, Kirk Cousins comes into play. Look where Kirk Cousins has been. Kirk Cousins has been excellent for the most part this year. Kirk Cousins top 13 quarterback. If your second quarterback is a top 13 fantasy quarterback, who's, by the way, the top 13, he had his bye week. He hadn't even played 7 games. So he's essentially a QB1 in fantasy. You got him way late. He was the best value at quarterback all season long. And that's what I was trying to tell everybody. You're getting all this high-quality value, and you're not having to take Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson back to back to back in the first 3 rounds, or some sort of variation of 3 or 4 wide receivers like you're in a best ball or something. Well, who's the other third running back? DeAndre Swift. So, I've stalled long enough. Let's review these guys, because right now, had you used that draft strategy, now sometimes, look, I was pretty much always getting DeAndre Swift, and I was always getting one of Najee or Eckler. Sometimes I had to have a game plan. I had to have a fourth head that I was willing to draft. So who was the fourth guy? Typically Zeke. It had been Chubb, Nick Chubb, sometimes, I think like once or twice. But for the most part, it was 3 out of 4 of those guys. And even Zeke's been fine. But for the most part, I'd say probably 80% of my redraft leagues, I started off with Eckler, Najee Harris, and DeAndre Swift. And if you did that, you drafted 3 of the top 5 running backs through 7 weeks. Is it the best draft strategy? I don't know. I don't know. I don't think we're not gonna go into 2022 like, oh, this is the best draft strategy. Like, there's no argument anymore. There's always gonna be an argument, I think. But right now, there's a strong argument nearly halfway through the season that heavy RB is the way to go. And I will pound the table for heavy RB. Now, I get it. Maybe you drafted a running back, Christian McCaffrey. But again, you weren't getting 3 workhorse. If you were drafting at the first or second pick, you weren't getting 3 workhorse running backs. Okay, in the first 3 rounds, more often than not saying it every time, but more often than not, you weren't getting 3 high-quality workhorse running backs with league-winning ceilings. But you were if you were drafting at the end of the first round and taking the heavy and going with the heavy RB strategy with these 3 guys. Austin Eckler, right now, RB4. Najee Harris, RB5 as a rookie. There was actually discussion on Twitter, on fantasy Twitter, that Najee Harris shouldn't be drafted as a top 12 running back. With the volume that he was going to get. There was actually people saying these things. Less than 365 days after experiencing the James Robinson experience. After going through the James, there were still people saying a more talented running back all the way around in every facet of the game. On a better team, with a better coach, with a better quarterback than what James Robinson had last year. And arguably even a better offensive line, is not worth a top 12 pick. We saw what James Robinson did. He was a top 5 running back last year. Top 6 running back last year. For the Jaguars. So what made you think that Najee Harris, if he stayed healthy with this massive amount of volume, wasn't going to be an RB1 in fantasy? We told you this back in May this was going to happen. All he has to do is stay healthy. Now, he could miss even a game or 2. He could still finish as an RB1 in fantasy. His snap share is through the roof right now. He's got the highest snap share of any running back in the entire league. The top 3, James Robinson with a 73.4 snap share percentage. Darrell Henderson, probably to the surprise of some of you, with an 81.4% snap percentage, and Najee Harris, 88.3 snap share percentage. 88%. It's unbelievable. Just to kind of put that in perspective here, the top three last year, to show you what Najee Harris is doing through 7 weeks, the top three last year, the top three snap share percentage at the end of last season, David Johnson for the Texans, 73.8. David Montgomery for the Bears, 73. Ezekiel Elliott, 72.5. Snap share percent. That was the highest. Nobody even came close to 80%. Najee Harris is at 88%. That keeps up. Najee Harris is probably going to finish the season as a top 5 running back. He is currently RB5 in fantasy right now. DeAndre Swift, RB2. RB2. You love to see it. And I love to see it mainly because you're kind of able to sort of dunk on all of the Jamal Williams people who panicked and sold DeAndre Swift and took him off their draft board after Anthony Lynn said, yeah, we kind of see Jamal Williams as like a 1A or a 1B. He's going to be heavily involved. He's going to be our starting running back. He's going to catch the most yada, yada, yada. It was all coach speak. That's all it was. They know who the most talented player in the backfield is. They know that from a talented skill set standpoint, DeAndre Swift, like I said, all summer long, is already probably a top 5 running back in the NFL. From an all-around skill set standpoint in real life, he is a top 5 running back in the NFL. He just plays for the Detroit Lions. So nobody seems to care. Nobody seemed to care. Nobody saw the upside. And even Mark and I agreed on this. We were like, look, this guy gets the majority of the pass catches. He literally has RB1 in his range of outcomes. It's probably not going to be RB1. That's reserved for like guys like CMC and, all that. But like, he's got that in his range of outcomes if he receives the majority of the receiving work, which I always believed he would. I was seeing right through Anthony Lynn. But how much is he seeing in actuality? And is there a tie-in with how many targets a running back receives versus where they finish? There's a little more to it than that, but for the most part, yeah. There is some correlation there. You chase the running backs getting the volume. DeAndre Swift has out-targeted Jamal Williams this season, 52-18. This isn't 47 to like 32. 52-18. It's not even remotely close. It's nowhere remotely close. DeAndre Swift is, not only is he vastly more talented than Jamal Williams, but he is outplaying him in nearly every facet of the game. He has 1 more rushing touchdown. He's got 7 more carries than Jamal Williams. So it's pretty evenly split when it comes to carrying the football. The difference is, and the reason DeAndre Swift is RB2 in fantasy right now is because of the 52 targets and the 2 receiving touchdowns and the 391 receiving yards on 42 catches. The involvement in the passing game, and we told you guys this, he was vastly better than Jamal Williams was in the passing game. What did Jamal Williams ever do to harm Aaron Jones? Nothing. He never harmed Aaron Jones' fantasy value. Now, would Aaron Jones have been better in fantasy and probably battling CMC for overall RB1? Yeah, if Jamal Williams wasn't there. But he had no problems being a top 5 running back like, 3 years in a row? So he was never going to affect DeAndre Swift as long as they involved DeAndre Swift and allowed him to be DeAndre Swift. And as long as Swift is getting this sort of work, and it's not going to stop because he's proven he can do it. It's not like he's not being productive with the work that he's given. It's going to continue. All three of Eckler, Najee, and DeAndre Swift are top three in the, all three of them are in the top 10 in the NFL in running back targets. 6 of the top 10 running backs are also top 10 in targets. There's your correlation. Aaron Jones is 11th. He's right behind Kenny Gainwell in targets. And that's he's obviously going to surpass Kenny Gainwell sooner rather than later. So he's going to be, that number is going to go from 6 to 7. So 7 of the top 10 running backs in fantasy are also top 10 in targets. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor is not up there. Myles Gaskin is not up there. Chase Edmonds is not there. So there's some names, obviously. But we weren't really, on those guys for the most. I mean, for Jonathan Taylor, of course. Which, by the way, I love the fact that Jonathan Taylor has pretty much shut up everybody that was moaning and whining and complaining about him through 2 weeks. I love it. It's my favorite thing. Everybody overreacting at, I need to sell Jonathan Taylor. Oh, it was a waste of a draft pick. And what does he do? He just turns into RB3 in fantasy through 7 weeks. Same thing. He's the running back version of Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is like doing these things that we all expected him to do for the most part. These all generational tight end things that he's doing right. He just got off to a slow start. He's a rookie. It happens. Jonathan Taylor was off to a slow start last year, his rookie year. And guess what? He finishes a top 5 running back. Patience, people. Patience. Things don't always happen overnight. So, look, all 3 of those guys have remained healthy, and you're lucky. I get it. Not everybody. You drafted CMC, you kind of drew the short end of the stick there. He hasn't stayed healthy. Kamara stayed healthy. Derrick Henry stayed healthy. Even Nick Chubb has been banged up. Zeke has stayed, you're gonna obviously running back. This was the point of contention, I think, for Mark and I during the entire offseason was, all summer long was, we constantly say that running back is the most injury prone position in the entire league, and it is. Unquestionably, it is. And then the argument, the counterpoint was, well, why would you, if knowing that, why would you want to invest so many early round picks, 3 to be exact, in players at that position? Because the reward outweighs the risk. Because if you can hit on all 3 and just, all you got to do is simply avoid these season-ending injuries, these 6-7 week at a time injuries. If you can avoid that and these guys can stay healthy, you get lucky enough to do that, you're going to reap the benefits. And look, I get it. Even the output that these 3 guys have given you, the proof right here, the evidence in front of you, for some of you, it's not going to matter. Some of you are still going to go 0 RB. Some of you are still going to go hero RB. And look, as long as you win, it doesn't matter. There's not a perfect draft strategy. I'm kind of answering the question at the beginning of the show. There's not a perfect draft strategy. Heavy RB certainly isn't the perfect draft strategy. It's my favorite, and I think it's the most tried and true one, and I think it's the safest one, and it's the best bet, and it gives you the highest odds to ultimately win. But it's not always, it doesn't mean it's always going to be the answer, and it's always going to work out. And that goes for the same thing with hero RB and 0 RB. And even the draft strategy of having drafted a quarterback in the first round. Another guy that was going in as an early second round pick, late second round pick in Superflex, the 14th pick really on average, was Antonio Gibson. And I know a lot of people are panicking on Antonio Gibson. Should you be panicking on Antonio Gibson? I gotta get rid of Antonio Gibson. Should you be panicking on Antonio Gibson? I've got an opinion on this that might not be popular. you should not be panicking on Antonio Gibson. You should not be panicking on Antonio Gibson. I understand. You're worried about the shin injury. You're worried about the fact that he's not producing like a top-flight RB1, like you were drafting him, hoping him to be. But the fact remains, you were drafting him in the late second and in some cases the early third. Okay? Again, 14th pick overall on average. So mainly a early second round pick in one QB leagues, late second in Superflex. So you were drafting him as your RB2 for the most part, which was fine. I drafted him in plenty of leagues as well when I went RB heavy. But he's currently RB15, and he's not even getting a majority of the targets. He has been out-targeted by J.D. McKissic 34-18 on the year. Yeah, it's pretty significant. It's not what you want to see through 7 weeks out of a guy that you spent a second-round pick on. I get it. I understand. You took him because there was a lot of preseason talk from coaches and from beat writers and everybody saying, Antonio Gibson's going to be heavily involved in the receiving game. He's going to be more involved than he was last year. It's about the same as what it was last year toward the end of the year. J.D. McKissic is clearly, as of now, through 7 weeks, clearly the preferred pass-catching running back. So, if you're an Antonio Gibson owner, and like I said, in several leagues I am too, and there's several leagues where I've traded for him in the past couple weeks, because I feel you can kind of buy him a little low. I don't think his price point is going to be lower than it is right now over the next week or two. I think that's going to be the lowest that it is. And if you're an Antonio Gibson owner, you have to just come to the realization and you have to embrace the fact that we simply drafted a running back in the second round that just isn't going to have the league-winning ceiling. During the summer, all of that talk going on, he's going to be more involved in the receiving game, yada, yada, yada. That was when the league-winning ceiling discussion, that's what was going to, push him into the Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler, DeAndre Swift, Najee Harris conversation. These guys that were getting in to some extent, even Jonathan Taylor, we'll get to him, but he's not even receiving. He's doing what he's doing. He's not even receiving the majority of the targets for the most part. But you need to just accept the fact that the league-winning ceiling isn't there. It's no longer there. And it's probably, things could change. Maybe J.D. McKissic gets hurt. We don't want to wish injury on anybody. Maybe he tweaks an ankle. Maybe he's out 3 to 4 weeks. I can hope for that. It's not a serious injury. It's just a little, get a little dinged up. You're a running back. Get a little dinged up. Kind of cut the wrong way. Tweak your ankle. Be out for 3 to 4 weeks. Let Antonio Gibson show what he can do in the receiving game. Come back healthy, and then the coaching staff says, "Hey, you know what? Let's give Antonio Gibson more receptions. Even though we got J.D. McKissic, let's give him more receptions." I don't know how it's going to work out. That would be ideal, right? Probably not going to happen. You need to face that realization. But guess what? You still got a top 15 running back as of now as your RB2. That's a strong RB2. I'm fine with that. That's 3 spots away from being a fantasy RB1. Right? So, it's not the worst thing in the world. And I think a lot of people are sort of overreacting, panicking on Antonio Gibson, trying to outright sell him to whoever the highest bidder can be. Look, if you want to do that, that's fine. I get it. And if you can get a guy like, maybe you trade Antonio, you're in Dynasty, maybe you trade Antonio Gibson in like a second round pick for DeAndre Swift. I don't know if you're going to be able to do that. It's just the first thing that comes to mind. But if you try to get a guy like Eckler or Swift or Najee Harris, whose target share is not up for debate, okay, and snap share is not up for debate, even a guy like Jonathan Taylor, I can't blame you for doing that. But if you can't find a trade partner, don't think that just because you're an Antonio Gibson or that you have to sit him every week because you can't rely on him. That's just not true. I'm still putting him in every single redraft lineup that I have him in. He is going out there every single week. I am not benching him for guys like Miles Sanders. Maybe this week can he gain one? I'm not benching him for those guys. I'm not benching him for Zach Moss. Okay? I'm not going to bench him for Kenyon Drake. Antonio Gibson is going to see my starting lineup because of the draft investment that I put into him. And it's only 7 weeks. Things can change. And look, I know he's got a shin injury. I'm worried about it too. A little bit. You don't want to get aggravated, but look, they're monitoring his practice work. He's been playing through it for nearly the entire year the entire time he's had it. He has been playing through it the entire time he's had it. Nearly the entire year. And I know, look, you drafted him for the ceiling, assuming the heavy target share. But you're just going to have to accept that that's not the case with Antonio Gibson anymore. But that doesn't mean that you should just give up on him. There's still a ceiling there. He can finish as an RB1 in fantasy. He's right on the cusp. So, look, shin injury or not, he can play through it. Hopefully it doesn't get any worse. Hopefully he can receive treatment. And hopefully him monitoring getting his practice reps monitored will help to ease this injury and help it to heal a little bit. Maybe he takes a week off. I don't know. But even then, he can still finish as a fantasy RB1. You could still get a good return on investment. You're just not going to get what you thought you were probably going to get, which is high-end RB1, mid RB1 production. Probably not going to happen. He's not going to be outproducing Austin and Derek and Dalvin and Zeke and probably not even Chubb or DeAndre or Najee or Taylor. But he can still be a fantasy RB1. He'll probably be a back-end RB1, high-end RB2. That's what you're looking at here. And in the second round, look, I'm not going to argue too much with it. 14th pick, I'm not going to argue too much with it. It is what it is. Things happen. But if he can play through it, Antonio Gibson's going to be fine. He was a shoelace tackle away. Do you realize this? He was a shoelace tackle away last week on Sunday from scoring a touchdown. And if he did, your worries about Antonio Gibson would be significantly lower, would they not? Yes. We all know it. So just keep that in mind. You're right on the edge with Antonio Gibson. It's like you're just right. You can't break through that wall, but you're right there. Will he break through the wall? I don't know. I have no idea. But being right at the wall, rubbing up against it, I think that's good enough. I'll take it. It's better that than him being off the field with a shin injury or not producing at all. So I'll take it. And also, if I recall correctly, Antonio Gibson did not play in the final quarter. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he sat out the final quarter last week. Or, the week 6 matchup against the Chiefs. He sat out the final quarter. So he only played 3 quarters. And again, he was a shoelace tackle away from scoring a touchdown. Calm down. It's only week 7. He's going to be fine. As long as he's healthy, he's going to be fine. The shin injury, I get it, makes you sweat a little, but he's fine right now. So don't go out and just go out and shop him. See what you can get. Probably not going to be able to get much. His value's low. But I'll tell you this. If you don't have Antonio Gibson, now's the time to get him. Now's the time to get him. I've been trying to go after him in a couple leagues where I don't have him. I will continue to do so. Because as long as he's healthy, I want that on my team. I want that talent on my team. Because he's going to produce. Maybe not as the receiver that we thought, but he is going to produce. Okay, so we've had a little bit of a new face kind of show up in the NFL. Doing some nice things at running back. A guy who in some rookie drafts didn't even get drafted. Think about that. In 4-round rookie drafts, this guy was mainly going undrafted. 6-round rookie drafts, he was going in the 5th or 6th round. Khalil Herbert, man. The Bears, I think they found a gem here. I think they absolutely found a gem here. And I think a lot of us just looked like he was getting drafted around like where like Jamar Jefferson and Jarrett Patterson were, like those types of guys. He wasn't getting looked at as like a serious, he's a 3rd-string running back, maybe even 4th string when Tariq Cohen comes back. Like that's how we were viewing Khalil Herbert. You don't even need to worry about him. Damian Williams is ahead of him. David Montgomery's healthy. He's obviously the lead back. Tariq Cohen's going to come back from the PUP list. He's going to be involved. Let me tell you something. Khalil Herbert may not be going away, and I get it. You're like, oh, this is a nice 3-game stretch. Let me sell high. David Montgomery's coming back. He's going to be, I'm telling you right now, Khalil Herbert, I think, is going to be here to stay. I'm not saying he's going to be a franchise running back, but I think for the most part, Khalil Herbert is going to be here to stay. Khalil Herbert has received 18 carries or more in every game that he started since Montgomery went down in week 4. 3 weeks in a row, and he's looked damn good doing it. Damian Williams, we're just talking about targets with running. Damian Williams leads all the running backs in Chicago with 14. But Khalil Herbert last week, when Damian Williams came back and everybody thought, oh, Khalil Herbert experiment's over. Even I was scared for Khalil Herbert. But everybody's like, oh, Khalil Herbert experiment's over. Damian Williams is the guy now. Go pick him up. Go scoop him up. Go trade for him. Yada, yada, yada. Khalil Herbert out-targeted Damian Williams last week in the receiving game 5-1 against Tampa. He looks to be a legit talent that's not going to go anywhere. And I get it. David Montgomery's going to be back. But I think this could turn out to be a full-blown split. David Montgomery may take the majority of the early down work, but Khalil Herbert, I think, is going to be heavily involved in the receiving game, if not the running game as well. I don't think there's going to be much of a change, to be quite honest with you. I do think David Montgomery is going to be given every chance to continue to be the guy. And I love David Montgomery. I think the world of him. I think they have 2 flat-out gems at running back right now. I do. I think they do. And hopefully, the production for both of them continues, because I've got Montgomery in several leagues, and I scooped up Khalil Herbert as fast as I could. And a lot of other ones. But he is valuable. He does have some value. And I just don't know how you can bench a guy or not involve a guy who has been this impressive 3 weeks in a row. It's not like he ran for 100 yards and then had a dud of a game for 36 yards and then came back and rushed for 100. This guy has essentially rushed for 100 yards in back-to-back weeks, has Khalil Herbert. One of which was against the best rushing defense in the entire NFL in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Fun fact, Tampa, all season long, had not allowed a running back to go over 67 rushing yards until Khalil Herbert last week went over 100. So that tells you Khalil Herbert didn't care. He didn't give a damn how good Tampa was against the run. He said, nah, just give it to me. Give it to me only 18 times. You don't have to give it to me 28 times. Give it to me 18 times. I'll get you 100 yards. That's what he said. Give me 5 targets in the receiving game. No big deal. Like, he's seeing the work here. So, I mean, and there was a. I'm sure a lot of you guys got it as well. The sleeper update where Khalil Herbert is moving up the depth chart. Well, we didn't know. I mean, that was fine, but we didn't know just how solid of a report that was, because he completely made Damian Williams just disappear like a fart in the wind. Damian Williams was nothing. And it looks like Damian Williams is a clear-cut third guy now, who is probably not going to be very involved in the backfield moving forward. Especially when David Montgomery comes back. So, yeah, you can drop Damian Williams. I woke up this morning. Of course, this morning was waiver morning for everybody. I woke up this morning to a bunch of sleeper and flea flicker updates. Damian Williams was like the most dropped player in all the leagues. So, yeah, you can go ahead and get rid of Damian Williams. Khalil Herbert right now is the only startable Bear. You can't really keep rolling out Justin Fields right now. You can't keep rolling out Allen Robinson right now. Even Cole Kmet. I mean, you got to be in a two tight end league to be rolling out Cole Kmet, and even then it's a little dicey. You're not starting Darnell Mooney. Okay, Khalil Herbert's the only guy you can pretty much start with confidence. I'm starting him against San Francisco this week with a lot of confidence in many leagues. He's really the only startable Bear. I'm going to be honest with you guys. If you have him in Dynasty, hold. Strong hold. Because I don't know what he's going to end up doing. I don't know if he's going to end up being the guy for Chicago. Maybe David Montgomery comes back and Khalil Herbert just completely outplays him. David Montgomery is not the franchise guy. He's not the Saquon Barkley, the Ezekiel Elliott, the Jonathan Taylor, the Derrick Henry. He doesn't have that job security. David Montgomery could literally lose his job. A guy that you were drafting in the third round of fantasy drafts could lose his job to a sixth-round rookie running back that wasn't even being drafted in sixth-round rookie drafts. That was obviously going completely undrafted, completely ignored in redraft leagues this year. So it is not out of the realm of possibility whatsoever that Khalil Herbert ends the 2021 season as the Bears' RB1. So if you've got him, you are not cutting him even when David Montgomery comes back. Absolutely not. You are holding him. And if you are stacked like if you are 5 running backs deep and Khalil Herbert's like your 5th or 6th guy, like, okay, trade him. Look to see what you can get for him. Maybe you're weak at wide receiver, but you are absolutely not dropping Khalil Herbert. Don't do it. Okay, so sell highs. You know what? Those are some guys, obviously, that I like, that I believe in, that I'm keeping the faith on. You know, we talked about Austin Eckler and DeAndre Swift and Najee Harris, and we've talked about them for months, about the high target share and why you should trust them, yada, yada, yada. As long as they're healthy, they're going to be top 10 running backs, all 3 of them. And right now, they're all top 5 running backs. Okay? Antonio Gibson. I just don't think you should panic yet. Top 15 running back, playing through an injury. I get it. I think he's going to be fine. Khalil Herbert. So those are guys, look, I'm buying Khalil Herbert. I'm buying Antonio Gibson. And I'm loving the fact that I started the season with Swift, Najee, and Eckler in a vast majority of my leagues. However, you're probably asking, okay, well, what don't you like? Like, who don't you like for the rest of the year? I'm going to be honest with you. Look, I get it. I get it. He has been an interesting story for the Falcons. You already know where I'm going with it. He's been an interesting story for the Falcons. You didn't draft him. You picked him up for free, after week 1. And you're liking what you're getting right now. I get it. But I'm selling Cordell Patterson. I'm selling him. He's not going to keep this up, guys. Like, it's just not. He's RB8 right now. Like, he's ahead of Elliott. He's ahead of Mixon. He's ahead of James Robinson. Kareem Hunt's hurt. He's ahead of him. He's ahead of Darrell Henderson, who's getting an 83% snap share again, by the way. Antonio Gibson, who I don't think he finishes ahead of Antonio Gibson. Like, it's not that I don't dislike Cordell Patterson. I just don't believe this type of production is going to keep up. I just don't. And I'm a Falcons fan. I would love to relish in the fact that, okay, we got some production from the running back position. You know? Everybody thought it was going to be Mike Davis, if anybody, and it's not. It's Cordell Patterson. I just think that if you're smart, you should sell Cordell Patterson. I don't see, and I'm not saying he's going to have a bad week this week or even next week or even the week after, but I don't think that by the time the real playoff stretch begins to rear its head And as you go into the playoff season, I do not believe Cordell Patterson is going to end the season as a guy that you can rely on, that's going to be, the fantasy running back surprise of the season. And a lot of times there's a guy like that. I don't think it's going to be Cordell Patterson. So my advice, I don't own Cordell Patterson anywhere because I wasn't going out and spending a bunch of fab on him and spending a waiver priority on him when everybody else was. Like, I'm going to save some of my money, some of my fab dollars for later on in the season when there's more important players coming about. So for me, I am selling Cordell Patterson. I'm at least putting him on the trade block. Hopefully he's not like your second or third running back. Hopefully he's like, your fourth or fifth best running back on your team. He would be on most of my teams. So I would be, obviously, I'd never be starting him. So I would be looking to trade him for something. But look, if you could get a guy, I don't know if you could get James Robinson for him. Maybe there's a Falcons fan. Maybe there's a Falcons fan in your league. Could you get Leonard Fournette? Speaking of Leonard Fournette, we're talking about a couple buy lows through 7 weeks. Guys, Leonard Fournette's it, man. There's no reason why you shouldn't believe in Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette's done it before. We've seen him be a fantasy RB1 before. Currently RB10 on the season. 93 carries. He's top 10 in carries, top 6 in targets. He's getting the work. Sorry, he is top 10 in carries, top 5 in targets at the running back position. The only guys ahead of him, DeAndre Swift, obviously, Najee Harris, obviously, Cordell Patterson, surprisingly, Myles Gaskin, didn't expect that, I bet, and then you get to 5 with Leonard Fournette. It's a tie between Leonard Fournette and J.D. McKissic in targets, but he is ahead of J.D. McKissic when it comes to receptions, and he is tied for 4th with Eckler, Patterson, Edmonds with 27 catches. So to me, Leonard Fournette has still got that window, guys, where you can go out and you can say, "Hey, I'm trading Cordell Patterson for Leonard Fournette. If I can do it, I'm doing it." I'll be honest with you. If you wanted to trade Antonio Gibson and get Leonard Fournette, I'd do it. And I'm buying Antonio Gibson. He's the next guy that I was going to talk about. He's the other running back buy that I would be targeting, that I'm actively going out and trading for. I will trade for both of these guys. I love Leonard Fournette as a top 12 running back the rest of the season. And it would not surprise me, guys, if he stays a top 10 running back in fantasy the rest of the year. Why can't he finish ahead of Joe Mixon and James Robinson and Darrell Henderson and Antonio Gibson and Damian Harris? Even Nick Chubb. Why can't he? Ronald Jones isn't any good. We know that. Gio's not going to be involved enough. Leonard Fournette is a workhorse running back on arguably the best offense in the entire NFL. He's going to get a ton of goal line opportunities, a ton of scoring opportunities. He's the preferred back in between the 20s. He's the preferred back inside the 20s. He's the preferred back in the receiving game for Tampa. Like, there's nothing to not like about Leonard Fournette. Now, again, the analytics community would have you believe that Leonard Fournette just sucks. That is not true. They've been trying to pump up that and shove that false claim down your throat for years. He's not. He's good. Okay? Leonard Fournette is a good football player. He needs the touches, but he's a good football player. Scored 4 touchdowns, averaging 4.4 yards a carry. When it comes to targets, he's got 12 more targets than the next closest guy in the backfield, which isn't Ronald Jones. It's Giovanni Bernard. Giovanni Bernard, who was brought in to catch passes, he is outpacing him by 12 right now in the year. The only difference between the two is that Gio has 2 receiving touchdowns. Leonard Fournette doesn't yet have any. That's going to change. Leonard Fournette is it, guys. Like, Leonard Fournette is a guy you need to be targeting. If you own him, you need to hold tight, and you need to start him pretty much every week, because the production's going to be there, because the opportunity and the touches and the volume is going to be there for Leonard Fournette. So don't be surprised, guys, if Leonard Fournette is the surprise fantasy running back of the 2021 season. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. You guys are always excellent. Obviously, sorry I don't. When I'm doing the start sit shows, that's typically where I'll answer the questions and stuff like that in the chat, guys. But when I'm recording the actual podcast, I can't be answering questions on the podcast, things of that nature. But I'll answer a couple here. Austin McAdams says, what do you think about Dearness Johnson? I like Dearness Johnson. I think Dearness Johnson has clearly got talent. The problem is he's not going to get a lot of volume. Kareem Hunt's on IR. He's going to be back in a few weeks. Nick Chubb's coming back probably this week, from the looks of it. So it's going to be a short-lived experiment with Dearness Johnson, but they've got three talented guys there. They can mix in all three. I think Nick Chubb is probably the safest when it comes to volume. I don't know how Kevin Stefanski says, oh yeah, let's take touches away from Kareem Hunt and let's give some touches to Dearness Johnson. Keep your best players involved if they're healthy. I'm not taking my two best players on my team off the field so that I can give Dearness Johnson after one game. Look, Dearness Johnson looked great, but he's not doing what Khalil Herbert's doing right now. He hasn't had 3 straight games of it. So I don't dislike Dearness Johnson. I'm fine with you holding on to him if you don't have shallow benches. But I think unless obviously Chubb and Kareem Hunt are not on the field, Dearness Johnson's just not. The volume's not going to be there. So unfortunately, this whole thing's going to be a little short-lived. Let's see. Somebody says, what part of the analytics community is scoffing at the 5th best weighted opportunities in the league? There's like nothing in his metrics this year that aren't above expectations except juke rate. Not really this year. It's been, I should have clarified. It's not this year. And I don't really, I've been spending less time on fantasy Twitter because I think Twitter as a whole is a cesspool. And it's extremely toxic. But I don't have the pulse on the analytics community's view on Leonard Fournette, but I'm sure with all the opportunity that he's getting, I'm sure they're thrilled with it. The problem is him as a prospect, him as a player, him as a player in general. The analytics community's never been very high on Leonard Fournette as a player, and all he ever does is prove everybody wrong. Look, is he a guy that is he going to be Christian McCaffrey and rip off an 80-yard touchdown on 12 carries? No, probably not. Right? But can he match the production that Christian McCaffrey has on 16 touches if he gets 25 touches? Yes, he can. And that's just the difference between the two as football players. The two different profiles. They're both running backs, but they're two different versions of running back. So that's pretty much what I mean, just in more of a general sense, not this year. So, all right, like I said, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. If you joined late, the episode will be up tonight. It'll probably be on all the podcast platforms first thing tomorrow morning. So you guys enjoy your night. Go Braves, baby. Game 2, chop on. And you guys have a great night. Thanks, guys.